if you're in upset, if something doesn't go the way that you expected it to go, that means that when you recognize whatever comes up, frustration or anger or upset, that you then make the choice to change it and say, okay, what can I do? Because here's something I know. I cannot control my circumstances. I cannot control my environment. I cannot control customers or clients that come in who are in upset. I can't control that. I can probably powerfully influence that at different times, but I can't control it. But there is one thing, if one thing only, that we can control. And I believe this is our gift that we have that we probably don't use as much as we could. That is the gift of the power to direct and control our thinking toward whatever it is we want. And so although I can't control my circumstances, what's the one thing I can control? My response. How do I respond to my circumstances? And the leaders, so we're talking about leadership here, right? The best of the best leaders are so good at this. They don't get to have a bad day. I used to let things like literally derail me for an entire day. I don't get to have a bad day anymore. The best leaders don't have a bad day. They usually don't even have a bad couple of hours. They have a bad couple of moments where they just breathe, regroup. Okay, how am I going to deal with this? You know this, right? When you look at the leaders who you really, aspire to be like, they're like the duck on the water. They just calm, cool, and collected. They may be paddling underneath there, but they're in control. Okay? All right. I've been studying these 3 words since 2001. And before you judge me and say, wow, Heather's a little slow on the uptake. 3 words since 2001. Let me share with you that sometimes in life, the most amazing, amazing concepts and lessons come in very, very simple packages, don't they? So I want to share with you a little bit about what this be, do, have is, because I believe that we can turn this into a formula for you to get any result that you want to have in your life. Any result. And here's how that formula goes. The have are really the results that you want to have in life. Now, as in anything, one of the things that you learn in life is before you can ever have anything in life, you have to determine what it is you want. And I'm not sure why. You would think that that would be one of the easiest questions to ask and answer for yourself. If I were to say, what do you really want to have in life? Do you know that of all the clients that I've worked with all over the world, that is the single most difficult question to answer? Now, I understand that some of you will have ideas of what you want to have, of course. You're going to have some ideas of, I'd like to have better relationships, or I'd like to have more money, or whatever it is. There's some generalizations, but do you have a very, very specific goal of what you're after? Do you have very specifically defined goals? I think probably in the business world, right, in your organization here at your office, you have some defined metrics, things that you're after, things that you measure. Do you take that same kind of thinking and direction of what you want to have and use that and apply that in the rest of your world? What do I want to have? Where do I want to go in my career? So whatever that is for you in the have category, just make sure the result for you is identified with clarity in writing. Brian Tracy says when you write something down, you're more than 1,000% more likely to achieve it than if you just thought about it. Put it down in writing. Just with that statistic alone, I'm putting that in writing, right? So you got to get really clear on what you want to have. And then you, of course, once you know what you want to have, you can figure out what actions do I need to take? What are the things that I need to do in order to get what I want to have? And you make sure that you're clear on those actions, really clear. Now, there's one important piece missing that I haven't talked about yet, and this is sort of the piece of the puzzle that's most often missing. This is the reason why most people don't accomplish, if they set out to accomplish something and they fail, what they're missing is the B side. The B is the belief. What is your belief about what you want to accomplish? Now, what I'm going to do is put in a formula there. So it's belief times actions equals results. And here's how that works. Let's say that you have a result out there that you're going after. Everybody think about something in your mind right now that's something that you're going after. Maybe you have been for a while. Maybe it's something you've tried and you haven't accomplished. Think about that for just a moment in your head. When you think about the result, Go now back to the action. Do you know kind of what you need to do to get that result? Yes or no? Nod your head if you're kind of clear on what you need to do. Okay? A lot of you are nodding yes, I know what I need to do. But then the B part, so why am I not doing it? If I know what I need to do to get the result, why do I not do it? And if you're not doing it, I always want you to check in on what are my beliefs about this result, about whether or not I can attain this result. What is my thought process? What am I thinking? Where am I holding myself back? Because if I'm doubting myself, if I'm saying I can't do something, then it's very likely true that you can't. It was Henry Ford who said this famous line that is just so riddled with truth. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. That's what this belief side is all about. So do you know how often you set up this belief system for yourself that you can't, and you don't even recognize it as a belief system, you just think it's the truth? Well, wait a minute. Are beliefs the truth? What do you think? Are beliefs the truth? Is your belief the truth? Yes or no?
Yes.
It's true for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I believe it, it's true for me. It's my truth. But how many of you, have you ever held a belief before that you ultimately found out you were wrong? Is there anybody like that, or is that just me? Okay, so sometimes you can realize that your beliefs, well, oh, but it was the wrong belief, I was wrong, and then you change your belief. So are beliefs really the truth? Where do they come from? It's really interesting to explore some of that. Where do my beliefs come from? Beliefs are really a thought that's thought enough times repetitively that it turns into a belief. But where did it come from? Is it true? I don't know. So let me give you an example, a real life example, because I actually went on a mission to prove this formula for myself and hopefully for others. And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to take on this formula, I would have to choose something that's so far outside of my realm of reality that if and when I accomplish it, I will know that I used this formula and it is a formula for success. Okay? So you want to know what I took on? I took on running a marathon. How many of you have run a marathon? Raise your hands. Okay, quite a few of you. So you know, already, let me just do this for you. You know what this is all about. When I took on running the marathon, let me just share with you that it was so far outside my belief system, because what my belief was is I am not a runner, I could never. It was just an I could never. Okay, how many of you are with me on that? Like, I could never run 26.2 miles. Okay, so that was just my belief system. But you know what? It was real. It was full on real. And it was so real that if you had ever seen me running on the side of the street, you would drive by and you'd go, oh, that poor thing, she should not be running. She should just not be running. You pick a different hobby. Because I'm just not that runner. You know how sometimes you see people run and you're like, oh, they're like a gazelle, like it just doesn't take any effort and they're going so stinking fast. How do you do this? That was not me, okay? So some of you are going, yeah, I can relate to that. So that was me. I can run on the tennis court, no problem. But you know, you give me a full block and it's a problem. So anyway, I decided I'm going to take this on. And if I'm going to do this, this is just going to be a one and done for me. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it big. So what I chose to do is I chose to run the 2500th anniversary of the original marathon in Athens, Greece. And that was in 2010, right? If you're going to do this, go big. So this is what I decided to do. If I'm going to fail, I'm going to go out big and I'm going to at least be in Greece. So, right? The booby prize. So anyway, how did I start doing it? Well, I knew my results. It was clear. It was defined. I had my target. My result was that I was going to run a 26.2 mile run. And what did I need to do? Well, I didn't exactly know in that moment what I needed to do, but I did know that there were a whole lot of other people in the world who had had success doing this, people who were even much less physically capable than I. So I knew that this was something that there was a system already written by someone, and I just had to do a little research and figure out what that system was. So I called a couple of my friends who I knew were marathon runners. My husband, Paul, had run the marathon before as well. So I just got connected. I started saying, okay, what's the right training program? What should I do? And I got a training program. And they actually give you a calendar. And it says, okay, on day 1 you run this much. And on day 3 you run this much. And I had literally, I think it was a 4-month training calendar where I had all my runs mapped out for me. I'm like, how's that for an action list? My do is actually already completely figured out. So all I have to do is get myself on those training runs, and then this can happen. So now is the troublesome part. What's the troublesome part? The be side. So who did I need to be, knowing that my original belief system was that I am not a runner? Who did I need to be? What thoughts did I need to have in order to make this a success? So give me some words. Who did I need to be to actually run this marathon? I needed to be what?
Think like a runner.
Determined, yes. Think like a runner. I had to be positive. What else? Dedicated, for sure. Motivated, disciplined, confident. So are you seeing, like, these words, you have to kind of get into the mindset of someone who's going to take this on and actually become that person. I had to completely change my thinking. My affirmation was, I am not a runner. I had to do away with that one and create a whole new one. I am a runner. I'm disciplined. I'm confident. I'm committed. You know, the whole thing. Does that make sense? And I had to just keep repeating it. So one of the things that helped me with the be was the do. So that's kind of interesting. But think of how closely related these things are. When you start to do something, it can build your confidence on the be side. Now, when I did my very first training run, I think I made it from about here to that wall back there. And then I was done, and I was thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? That was not so much a confidence builder. But some of the other things that I did were, I registered myself and paid the marathon registration fee. My B went up. Because now my commitment level, I showed my commitment, right? The second thing I did is I booked my flight to Greece. The B went up again. Now I put money behind this, right? I'm actually going to do this, and I'm going to go. So what happens is when you start taking forward action, you start building that confidence. It's not just B1. If I just sat there and meditated and said, I am a runner and I am awesome, that was never going to get me across any finish line, right? So you can't have just the thinking. You have to have the action. So I recognized that, look, that first training run was scheduled to be very short because, of course, my body was not trained for distance running, has not been trained, has not, since high school gym class, I had not run a mile, you know. So it was the doing, the activity, that helped to build the confidence. Do you guys get that? I want you to think about your own scenario. I want you to think about the result that you went after. Everything that you did, that you stayed consistent with, that you committed to, and you did, it built your confidence every way along the way. So my training experience was phenomenal that whole way through, and I did every single training run, and we got to Greece. And you know, my husband at the time, he had run one marathon before in Chicago, and so he said, you know, I'll run a little bit with you. But when he started training with me, he said, no, I remember what this training is like. I'm not going to run the full marathon with you. I'll maybe run a 10K. Maybe I could do a half, but that was it for him. So we get to Greece, and we start the marathon, and the level of excitement is just extraordinary, right? And you see all of these amazing athletes out there, and then there's me. And so the energy, everything is so exciting, and Paul was there with me, and we start the run, and just feeling great, had done all the training runs. My longest run before I ran the marathon was over 25 miles. So I'm like, I got this. I got this. Now, you're going to learn more about my behavioral style in a moment, but I didn't pay attention to the small detail, which was more than half of the Greek marathon was uphill. And I trained in Florida, mostly on a treadmill because it was during the summer. So the funny thing is, and you know what? I know they have the settings that make the thing go up, but that was not something I was up for, so I never did that. I just stayed flat. And I was taught by one of my coaches, he said, listen, Heather, when you're running, I want you to just visualize yourself crossing that finish line every time you do a training run, because that's really going to help you. You've heard about this thing before called visualization. It's really going to help you if you can put your mind and pretend like it's the actual finish of the marathon. So I lived Paul and I were in Southwest Florida at the time, and we were not in an official retirement community, but we were kind of in a retirement community. So we'd go up to our gym, and I'd do my run on my treadmill. And he told me, he said, you know, pretend like it's your finish line every time. So I'd do my long run, and you'd have all these ladies come in, and they'd be doing their exercise, and I'd be running on my treadmill, and when I got to the end, I'd actually do like, yeah, and I'd put my arms up like I had finished the run. And I at one point had them just clap for me, because they're like, I don't know, she did it. So anyway, we got to Greece, we did the run. It was painful. And when I say painful, I mean like physically. Even though I had done the flat run, it's just a whole different ballgame, whole different training. So I mean, I literally nearly crawled across that finish line. But what was interesting for me in all of this is that my husband, who was going to leave me at the at the 10K or possibly half, when we got to 10K, he said, "Oh, you know what? I'm just going to keep going with you. I'm feeling good." And he went all the way to the half marathon point with me without doing the training. And when we got to the halfway point, he's like, "You know what? I feel good. I'm going to keep going." He stayed with me and he ran the entire 26.2 miles by my side because he wanted to be there with me when I finished. And that was his big. He's in the back there. Give me him. So when you get locked in on what it is you want, you figure out what you have to do to get there. Never forget who you need to be. You guys, we are our worst critics. We give up on ourselves way too easily. This is something that, if I had just listened to me, I never would have done it. I never would have had the amazing experience of the training, the discipline that came with the training. By the way, that's the same time that my business shot through the roof. But wait, I had to spend all this extra time. It didn't matter. What was happening to my my belief in myself as I did that? My results exploded. So sometimes, when we work with people on leadership, we work on the whole picture. We work on everything. Don't give up on yourself too easily. Don't buy into your belief system. I've heard it said before, the acronym for belief system is what? BS. Don't believe your own BS. Don't believe in your belief system. Question it. Question it and ask, what, is this just my belief? If you say you can't, then you won't. John Maxwell is one of my mentors. Who's heard of John Maxwell before? Raise your hand if you've heard of him. Okay, quite a few of you. So he's a leadership guru. He's written over 70 books on leadership. And he says this. He says, leadership is not about titles, positions, or flowcharts. It's just about one life influencing another. That's really what it's all about. Now, when I was growing up in the business world, I used to think that leadership was reserved for my managers, my supervisors, directors, boss. I mean, that's in my head what leadership was. Is it was for once you got there. Oh my gosh, have I learned otherwise. Leadership has nothing to do with a title. It has nothing to do with a job description or a role. Leadership is who you're being. It's everything about your being. It's how you influence other people. You can be a leader, and you know what? You probably know this. There are some top leaders in your organization that are not in the top management levels. How many of you know this? That leaders are everywhere. Now, is it common that someone with strong leadership skills gets promoted? Yes, it is. It's very common because those are the kinds of skills that we need, the ability to influence the life of someone else. So I'm going to tell you about the tool that I use that helps you to influence lives. Now, how many of you have ever heard of the DISC profile before? Raise your hand if you've heard of DISC. Okay, a few hands. If you were here in the year 2000, I think is the last time that you guys may have done a DISC assessment for yourselves. So if you've been here since 2000, some of you with the service awards, congratulations, by the way. You may be a little bit familiar. Now, I was exposed to the DISC profile first in my young 30s, and it was when I was a lobbyist. You have all used the DISC before. Let me tell you what the DISC is. The DISC is a way to assess and define it's a universal language of observable human behavior. Okay? So DISC is just it's a term, and I'm going to explain it to you, but it's a language, and it's universal. And it's about behavior. So it's the way that we read each other based on how we behave. Does that make sense? So all of you are already using it. Let me start by saying that. But maybe it's never been defined for you before, the same way that it hadn't been defined for me. And I used to, as a lobbyist, have to go in and meet with people, and sometimes they were very important people, and I would only have a few moments to try to figure out who they were and connect with them. Okay? And so I had to figure out, okay, is this somebody that I have to be really quick with because they're really in a hurry? Is this somebody who's going to be really friendly and I've got to be friendly back in order to connect with them? Is it someone who goes at a little bit slower pace and is more steady? Or is it somebody who's very analytical and is going to want a lot of facts and figures and details from me? So I'd have to figure that out a lot on the fly. And you all think about those things and you figure that out with everybody who you interact with, right? Whether it's a customer coming in, a lawyer that you're working with, a judge that you work with, you have to figure these things out all the time. Well, when I was first given a context for this, it was like my light bulb went on. I had my aha moment when I saw this. I'm going to teach this to you and give you as much as I can of this knowledge and show you how you can apply it. And again, if you get really engaged in this part of the conversation, you can take this with you to every aspect of your life, okay? So there are 4 main behavioral styles. There's no right, there's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad. This doesn't have anything to do with intelligence or aptitude. This is just about behavior, okay? And I want you, this is going to be an audience participation sort of exercise, so I want you to really get engaged in this conversation. And I want you to tell me, when you look at the D style and the I style up there, there's one thing that the D and the I have in common. What is that? Everybody out loud. Outgoing. Outgoing. Okay, let's do that one more time like it's outgoing. The D's are outgoing, right? D's and I's are outgoing, okay? And that's very different from the C's and S's. The C's and S's, everybody, are what? Reserved. Okay, so let's just start with that. And I'm going to have you do your own self-assessment here. If you were to think about, if I were to ask people who know you well, would they tell me that you're more outgoing or more reserved? Think about that. So everyone who's outgoing just said outgoing out loud, just so you know. So, all right, so I want you to just think. Now, there are some of you who are a little conflicted, and you say, well, it depends on the situation, because sometimes I'm outgoing in this situation, and sometimes I'm more reserved in this situation. And I get that. I want you to just pick one that you think more suits you, okay? What would your friends tell me about you? And don't be thinking about like who you are just with your immediate family. Be thinking about who you are at work or who you are when you're out in public. Are you more reserved or are you more outgoing? So does everybody have your answer, yes or no? Yes. Okay, how about raise your hands please if you picked outgoing. Okay, excellent, very good. And then I'm going to guess that everyone whose hand was not up is reserved. Now if I asked for the how many of you are reserved, I would have gotten more of like I wouldn't be able to see all the hands, okay? Now, outgoing is like, yeah, that's me. Okay, good, very good. Now, I want you to ask yourself the question, are you more of a people person, so the I's and the S's have what in common? People. Or are you more, what did the D's and C's have in common? Task-oriented. So this one is like, you all know the people, right? You can't mistake a people. The people want to be around people. They like people. They enjoy people. They want to work with people. And those of you who are people go, well, doesn't everybody? No. You know you're a people person if you're saying, doesn't everybody like that? No. Okay. The D's and the C's, on the other hand, like to get things done. They like to cross things off the list. Those of you who are nodding your head right now, you are a task-oriented person. Okay? So I want you to ask yourself the same, question where you get an answer. Would people say that you're more of a people person or task-oriented? Do you believe you're more of a people person or task-oriented? And again, if you're struggling with this because you say, well, sometimes I'm a people person, but other times I like to really cross things off my list, just pick one. Okay? Pick one that seems to suit you more. If given the option and you had to do some work, would you rather do it together with people and for people? Would you rather just go and get it done? Okay? And that should help you answer that question. Now, all right, so just to make sure you've all done this exercise, I'd like you to raise your hand for me if you are a people person. Raise your hand. Okay, good, got it. Quite a few people persons, people. So now what's interesting is, depending on how you raised your hand and with what level of enthusiasm, you might be more outgoing or reserved. Does that make sense? Like if you're a people person and you're outgoing, you're like, that's me, right? Whereas the person who's more reserved is going to be like, yeah, I'm a people person. I'd rather work with people, but not as in an outgoing way, right? Okay, so now everybody should be able to assign a letter to themselves based on those two questions that you've just asked and answered. So I want you to pick your letter. And I want you to understand that I'm having you do this in a very unscientific way, but I want you to just connect with at least one style that you believe is part of you. Okay, so you're going to pick just one letter for right now. So if I were to say that I was outgoing and I was a people person, what letter would I be? Excellent. If I was a task-oriented person, but more reserved, I would be what? C. You guys are good. If I were outgoing and task-oriented, I would be what? D. And if I were a people person, but more reserved? S. Very good. Does everybody have your letter? Very good. Okay. Now, I'm going to describe to you these 4 different styles. And remember, these are behavioral styles. This is what we can observe about each other. There are going to be things that you relate to probably in all 4 categories. You're probably going to relate to a little bit with D, I, S, and C. But there are going to be some things I say that you really relate to. You'll know that because you'll start laughing. Okay? There are going to be other things that you will relate to someone else, like your spouse or your boss or your coworker. And you'll hear that and you'll go, oh, now I get it, okay? So I just want you to be perceptive of what you're observing as I go through. When I describe these different styles, I'm going to do it in a way where I'm just describing the primary style and what we call is a pure style. So as an example, when I talk about the D style, I'm just going to be talking about someone who is just D and nothing else, so that you really lock into what are the D characteristics. So if you chose D as your letter, it doesn't mean that I'm describing you exactly, because you probably have some of the other letters as well, but I want you to lock into what the D style is about, and then I'll do that for each style. So is everybody clear on that? Excellent. Now what I'm going to have you do, again, this is going to be an audience participation exercise. If you chose D for your style, I'd like you to stand up for a moment, please. So try to get your stuff organized. Stand up for me. Okay. Now everyone look around the room. Is everyone standing who should be standing back there? Okay, thank you. Excellent. All right. I want you to just look around the room for a moment and observe who's standing, who's a D style. Everybody clear on that? Okay. Now, before you sit down, let me just share a couple of things about the D style. So the D stands for dominant. The D is a driver. The way that the D looks at things is how you deal with problems or challenges. The higher your D is, the more that you take a problem on and you're like, let's go, I can handle it. The Ds are actually sometimes bring it on. You know, I'm looking for that challenge. I love to solve problems, okay? So the D will actively attack and pursue a problem when they find it. The D is, if you don't have a lot of D, so if you're sitting there and you're sitting down right now and you're saying, yeah, no, I don't like problems, the lower the D in your style, the more that you're just going to be reserved and conservative. Okay, so if you don't like challenges and you'd rather hand those off to someone else, then you probably have a lower D. Does that make sense? Okay, everybody, you may be seated. Thank you. Thank you to our Ds. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about who the D is. So the D is someone who is assertive. The D is very results focused. In fact, that's really the driver for the D is the result. The D makes very rapid decisions. The D will multitask. The D seeks challenges. They can be aggressive and they can be impatient, and they have a desire to lead. You will usually see Ds in leadership positions because they will make quick decisions. They will drive. They're independent. They take risks. Okay, so that's what the D is all about. Now the Ds are very competitive too. You will very rarely find a D who will play a game for fun. You know, like if somebody, right? If somebody says, oh, let's just play and not keep score, then he's like, whatever, right? Why would you do that, okay? In fact, the D is so competitive that usually second place just means first loser. Like that's just not even an option, right? Okay, so that's a little bit about the D. So the strengths of the D really are that driven, that ambition, the competitive nature. The thing that a D has to watch out for is we tend sometimes to be challenged with this thing called listening. Okay? So because usually with the D, we are supposed to be somewhere else, right? The D, you will find, like, how do you recognize someone who's a D profile? They're typically checking their watch because they're on to something else. They're always thinking forward. They're going, okay? So that's a little bit about the D style. Now, knowing what you know and what I've just described, how do you think a D would plan a wedding? Okay, like they absolutely could go to the clerk's office because they're about quick and they're about efficient, right? Now, the other thing, like the D is really efficient. They want to try to just line things up and get it done. Let's go. So they might also kind of combine the wedding and the honeymoon all together in one place. They might just go to Vegas, get it all done, right? Let's go, let's get it done, let's go, let's move. Honeymoon, let's go, let's go. Okay. All right, now let's talk about the I profile. So if you chose I as your letter, I's, would you please stand up for us? And everybody give them a hand because the I's really like to be recognized anyway, right? Okay, and stay standing for just a moment. The way that we determine the I style is how you deal with people. So if you are a high I, those of you who are standing, you're people, right? And you enjoy people and you're good with people. You interact well, you connect well. You always make people feel good around you. You got to love, when you have a customer who comes in and they're an I, you love working with I's because they usually have a smile on their face. They want you to be happy. They're usually happy, right? The I's are optimistic. And you'll notice that the I's are talking. The I's are almost always talking. Usually when we do these exercises, I'm like, okay, I's, take it down a notch. So, okay, so if you're not in that high I category, if you're a lower I on the scale, you're just going to be a little bit more introverted and reserved. It doesn't mean you don't like people, but you're not going to be the outgoing people person. Does that make sense? Okay, everybody give the I's a hand again. The I stands for influence, and so the I's, their strengths really are that they are influencers. The I's are the only style I know who can win an argument on anything and influence you on anything, even if they don't know what they're talking about. They'll convince themselves, they'll convince you, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I guess that's the right way to go. Okay, the I's are outgoing, they're enthusiastic, they're persuasive, they're people-oriented, and they're also talkative. So here's what we say. Generally speaking, the I's are generally speaking. Okay. The rule is 2 ears, 1 mouth. Make sure we use them in that proportion, right? Okay. So that's a little bit about the I's. And as I said, the I's are just very good. Anytime you have a role or a need where you need to connect people together, find an I to work with because that's an absolute strength of theirs. Now, the challenge for I's oftentimes is follow through. And so if you're an I, what happens is you get excited about things and you probably start a lot of things with full energy and excitement, but then you can get bored quickly, right? Because the I's like constant movement. They like to keep doing things. And the thing is, too, they're very optimistic. They'll take anything on. Yeah, we can do that. Yes, we can. We're going to be successful at this no matter what. And then they go with it, and they bring all this excitement and enthusiasm, but then squirrel. Oh. Yeah. So there are a lot of you who just recognize that in your pattern, right? Or in others. Okay. All right, good. So that's a little bit about the I style. Now, how about this question? How would an I plan a wedding?
I would.
Like just everything, like everyone you know, right? Anyone you've ever met before, and even people you meet from the time you're engaged to the time you get married would probably be part of that wedding. Now, how do you choose your wedding party? Everyone, right? You just ask, just everyone, right? The I would never want to disappoint or make anybody feel bad. So the I will just include everyone all the time. The I wants everyone to feel good and as good as they feel all the time. Okay? All right, good. So that's Have you guys ever had to marry someone who brought all these people in to the clerk's office? Yeah. Okay. That's the I, just in the future. All right, let's take a look at the S style. And you'll notice when I talk about the S style, I start to bring my voice down a little bit. I start to go a little bit slower. Because the S style is steady. The pace is steady. It's all about the pace with the S style. And so what I want you to do, if you had S as your letter, would you please stand? Excellent. Give them a hand. Now, I will tell you that for the S's and the C's, the I's are still talking. They're talking about that wedding. They're like, you should see what we did with my wedding. For the S's and the C's, it's less comfortable to be up and standing in front of the group. So I promise I won't keep you up for too long, but I appreciate you playing along. So with the S's, again, it's all about the pace and the activity level and how you deal with that. So here's what I love about the S style. The higher the S, the more patient that you are, the more stable that you are. You love stability, you like systems, you like consistency. Okay? So those of you who are standing up, if that resonates with you, you're likely an S profile. Now, the lower the S, the more rapid pace, fast pace, multitask, spontaneous, they're low patience. And so when you think about the distinction there, the S profile has all the patience in the world, unbelievable team players. Whereas if you have very little S, that kind of sounds like someone who has very high D, doesn't it? So those two profiles are very distinct, and you might notice, some of you, that those of you who are S's, you might be married to or have a relationship with someone who has D in their style. That's very, very common. You know how they say opposites attract? That really happens. And so if that happens, you'll notice that there's someone else in your life who's typically driving and on the go, and you're going with them. You're like, okay, okay, okay. So, all right, everybody give the S's a hand. Take a seat, thank you. So let me share a little bit about the S style. So as I said, the S's are very patient. They're reliable. The S's are methodical. They're stable. They're very good listeners. The best of all the styles at listening are the S's. They're steady, they're laid back, and they're modest. So that's a little bit about the S style. Now, you think about the S's as good listeners, as team players. When you look around at those who were standing up who are S's, I bet you every one of them thought, oh my gosh, they are great team players, and they're stable, and they're consistent. They're the glue that hold our organizations together. They help everybody get along. They maintain status quo, because one other thing about the S's is they hate conflict. Am I right about that? No conflict. Please, no conflict. So if you have conflict, hand it to a D. They'll take that over for you. No problem. Right? Okay, so the challenge can be for S's sometimes, maybe all the time, have a difficult time saying no. If you're relating to that one, you just might be an S. So if you're constantly taking things on, if you're in a group meeting and somebody says, well, who's going to do that? And you don't hear anyone put their hand, you're like, okay, I'll do that. So you're always taking, because you're such a supportive person, but sometimes you take too much. Sometimes you take more than you can handle. And so there are times where the S, I think, has an imaginary notepad. And on this imaginary notepad, each time they're asked to do something and they don't really want to do it, they may resent it even though they've taken it on. They write your name down, and then they write it down, and then they write it down. Something happens and they don't address it because they don't like conflict, but they'll write it down in their little imaginary pad. And once that pad fills up, then they blow. Then it's like a full-on explosion, and then everything's good again. Now, I say this because I know this, because my husband is an S profile. And so I know when his book gets filled that we'll have a momentary lapse of judgment, maybe? I don't know. And then we're right back. So it's like the S. Okay, so every style has an emotion. The emotion for an S is no emotion. And it doesn't mean that the S doesn't feel emotion. They do. They just don't show it. They have what we call a poker face. There I go with poker again. So the S will have a poker face. You likely will not be able to tell if you have somebody who's a high S style. You will not be able to tell if they're having a great day or if they're having the worst day in their life, because they're probably not going to wear their emotions on their sleeves. Whereas with the D or the I, you'd see it just like that, right? Especially with the I, then you'll hear about it too. Okay. So how do you think an S would plan a wedding? What do you think? Would they go big, huge? No. More intimate, yeah, more intimate, maybe traditional, something like that. Now, is everybody looking at that right now going, yeah, I could be there too. I don't need to be an S. But you think about it, the S likes to be in a smaller setting. The S likes to be with a more intimate group. You know, it takes longer to get to know an S and to get an S to trust you. But if you really work on a very personal level in connection with the S style, not only will you get to trust you, but you'll have a friend for life who will support you for life. So it may take longer to build that trust and that respect with the S, but if you really work at it and you stay patient with it, it's an amazing relationship. Okay, now let's take a look at the C profile. Now, if you had C as the letter you chose, would you please stand up? Lots of C. All right, and some of you may be a little uneasy at the thought of standing up because the data's not all in. I didn't give you enough, parameters with which to make this decision. So if that's your thinking right now, then you're right to stand up, because that would be very natural for you to think, well, I'm not 100% certain, but if you know you're conscientious, if you know, because C is all about the level at which we deal with rules, attention to detail, accuracy, and data. And so if you're one of those people and you pay attention to those things, then you're absolutely right to be standing up. So the C profile, very conscientious, very high standards for themselves and for others. If you don't have a lot of C in you, there's a distinction. So the C's like the rules, play by the rules, want the rules. If you don't have a lot of C in you, then you're the opposite. You're more a person who questions the rules, where you're independent, you're a risk taker. So some of you who are sitting, you're thinking that way, like, oh yeah, I'm not so much about the rules. So if you're very, very low C, and let's say somebody draws a line in the sand and says, don't cross that line, you'd be like, what line? Is there a line somewhere? So if you don't have a lot of C, you would rather ask forgiveness than permission. People with a lot of C, those who are standing who have the C, you can see how there can be some inherent conflict in wanting to follow the system and follow the rules, whereas somebody maybe with an I doesn't pay quite as much attention to that detail and is like, why are you so caught up on the rules? And the C is going, don't you ever do anything by the book? So can you see how very easily you can make judgments about people instead of just recognizing that's just their style, that's how they're wired. You get that? Okay, everybody give the C's a hand. Thank you for standing for us. So as I said, the C's are conscientious and they're compliant. If you want to get something done right, give it to a C. Now, if you want to get something done on time, that could be a different story. So here's the thing with C's, sometimes they have such high standards and they will work so hard at getting the right product that sometimes they seek perfection, right? Because they want to get it right. So C's are about data, they're about analysis, they are precise and accurate, they're structured, as I said, they have high standards for themselves and for others, and they really value the rules. If you're someone who's sort of breaking the rules or going outside of protocol, you're gonna challenge a C style if you do that. So C's, remember your strengths just is that ability to get things right and have a really great work product. Never question a C's work product. Like don't take issue with the person. Talk about what's missing from the product because they will fix it if they didn't understand what you wanted. Okay, now how do you think a C would plan a wedding? Yes, exactly. Step by step, checklist after checklist. Would the C have a budget, yes or no? Yes. Absolutely. Is there a lot of flexibility with that budget? No. Now, if the C is marrying a high I, Lord help you. But it happens, right? It happens all the time. So let's say the C is marrying the high I, and the C is like, okay, we've got this budget. And the I is like, but wait a minute, we need the better DJ because we're going to have the DJ and we're going to have fun. And by the way, this budget doesn't work because we need open bar. And we're probably going to need to extend the open bar because we're going to have fun with the DJ. We can't stop the dancing. Right? So, yeah. This is kind of how that goes, and then you wonder why people drive each other crazy is because they have very different styles. But listen, That's what makes us all unique. That's what makes us fit together. That's what makes any organization work. Did you see what a great mix you have in D and I and S and C? Can you imagine if your office had only Ds? Whoa, what would happen? There'd be a lot of that going on, right? A lot of decisions. A lot of decisions made, but who's going to execute, right? What if you had only high I's in here? Woohoo! That's right. It would be you would win the award for the most fun clerk's office in the country, hands down. But how much work would actually get done or completed? Not so much. But the holiday parties, those would be worthwhile. Okay. Now, how about if you had only S's in the organization? What would happen then? So someone said it'd be absolutely perfect. Yeah, with the S's, you would have like a really great, stable environment, but who would drive? Who would drive the decisions? Because the S's don't like to stand out and make quick decisions, do they? Now, how about if you had all C's? Accurate. Yes, you would be the most accurate clerk in the country. You'd have a great work product. But can you see how you all need every style? And here's one thing that I've really learned. I think when I was growing up, before I really understood this whole disc profile, disc style, disc analysis, I didn't get it. And so those who weren't like me, I may have judged. Now I know nobody in here would ever do something like that. But I may have judged other people for their style. Like, well, why don't they like to hang out with anybody? Or why are they so caught up in doing this? Why do they act that way? So the great thing is once you really start to learn about this disc, you start to understand that it's not about judgment, really. It's about embracing all the different styles for all the great strengths that they bring. At this stage of my life, I look at those. Who can guess what my style is? I probably shared a little bit when I was going through this, but what's my style? I and D is what I heard. I don't hear any C or S out there. Anybody? Anyone? Anyone? Can I get a C? No, you can't. So mine is D and I predominantly. And I respect, admire, wish that I had the traits and characteristics that the C and the S have naturally. Now here's the interesting thing though. I have all four styles, as do every one of you. And here's my role when we talk about influence, is to find a way, instead of just being a high I or a high D or a high S or a high C, our game is to become a high disc. What does that mean? Yeah, the ability to bring whatever I need at the time. And so, I look at the S and I say, oh my gosh, you have so much patience. If I could get just an ounce of that patience, I would love it. Well, the reality is, I do have that ability and I can manufacture that. It takes some high emotional intelligence for me to do it. Right? Remember that thing I said before about the line of choice? I've got to make a choice to have the patience. But of course I can do that. I have to be conscious of it because it's not my natural. I look at the C style and I say, man, do I admire your attention to detail. I'm constantly on to the next thing before I finish this thing, right? Really admire it, but that's not an excuse. I can't make an excuse for being a DI and say, oh, I didn't have time to detail or I didn't have time to finish it. No, I absolutely have the ability to be a C. It's just not natural, so it takes a little effort. It takes that thing called choice. The same for C's and S's. If you're a very high C and you're really caught up in getting it right and you're saying, well, I can't get this done on time because it's not right, and that's no good either. You pull up your D, you get it done. Does that make sense? If you're a high S and you've got change going on in the organization and you dig your heels in and say, no, I really don't like change. Not good. We know the one constant we have in life is change, so sometimes you need to pull up your I or your D and go with the flow. So it's about being a high disc. It's about pulling whatever style you need to pull. It's also about respecting whatever style other people have. So when you see a behavior that is not the behavior that you would display, rather than judge it, you now get to look at that and say, oh, that person is a fill in the blank, D-I-S-C. That's a better blank than another blank you can fill in, right? Fill in that blank. Okay. What is this thing on the screen? Can anybody tell me? A chameleon. And what is the job of a chameleon? Yes, to adapt, right? To blend in. And why does the chameleon do this? Survive. It is full on for survival, okay? I would suggest to you that if you are interested in continuing to build your leadership, that this is also a requirement for us, is our ability to adapt. I want to share something with you that John Maxwell taught me. He taught me about this thing called the leadership lid. And he says this. He says, every one of us has a leadership lid. And all over the room, I look at each of you and I know that our lids are in all different places. Some of you have strengths in one area and some of you have strengths in another area. Some of you have areas to improve in one area and others in another area. So we're all over the board on where our leadership lid is. Does it make sense? Leadership lid. This is how much we've grown as a leader. What John Maxwell says is that your results, your organization, can never, ever outperform your leadership lid. I'd go so far as to say your results in life, your results in your relationships, your financial results, all of them cannot ever go past that leadership lid. That leadership lid is all about your own personal and professional growth and development. That's what we're here for. That's what we're kicking off. So you think about it. If we can grow you as a leader, all of the results will follow. And it's not just in business, although yes, you will have results in business. The results that you have will show up in every single area of your life as you continue to grow. So will the results. It makes sense, right? That's one of the reasons I got so excited when I read that book. Because I recognized this part is up to me. Well, that means if I choose to go here, then everything comes with. So in the spirit of there's always a next level, I don't ever want you to confuse your leadership lid with your leadership potential. Because where is your potential? How many of you know exactly what your potential is? I don't see any hands. I've yet to meet the person who tells me what their potential is. The fact is we don't know, but we know it's big. And here's the greatest thing about leadership. Leadership is a learnable skill. Every single one of us can continue to learn how to be more influential. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so knowing that we have an unlimited leadership potential, the most important question for each of you becomes, do you want to tap into that? And if so, how much? That was the decision that I made way back when I read the book, was to tap into that. And I wanted to go big. Of course, the D in me is competitive. I want to keep going big, keep going big. But that's a really important question to ask and answer. Maybe one of the most important questions you can ever ask and answer for yourselves in your life, would you agree? Is how much do I want to go after that potential? And it has nothing to do with anything that's happened so far in your past. It has nothing to do with where you are right now. Where you are right now is just a result of your past thinking. What it has to do with is the commitment that you make now will serve you for the future. I don't care what age you are. I was just working with somebody last week up in St. Louis who was in his late 50s, and I was just teaching him the concepts about DISC. And at the end, when I asked if there was questions, he said, can you tell me why I'm just learning this now? It was in the I don't know what I don't know part of that pyramid for him. He said, how long has it been around? Why don't I know about this thing called coaching? Why don't I know about this leadership development? Like, I'm excited, but I wish I had known way back when. So do I, but I'm grateful that I learned when I did. So whatever you do, wherever you are in life, you get to choose, and that's 100% up to you. Now, the really great thing is that the clerk's office has invested in you. They've invested in us to bring us in, to be with you. So you've got support here in addition to whatever you're choosing in your own growth, in your own potential. And so we grew up learning the golden rule. Everybody out loud, what's the golden rule? All right, so at some point along the line, we probably all heard this, learned this, and I actually think it's a really great way to live. I think it's a great rule to live by. When it comes to values, if I am treating you the way that I want to be treated, it's hard to go wrong, right? when it comes to one-on-one interpersonal communication, rather than just a rule, I suggest a law. We call it the platinum law. What's the platinum law? Everybody out loud. Treat others as they want to be treated. What's the distinction? Yeah, it's rather than treat you the way I want to be treated, communicate with you the way I want to communicate, I'm going to communicate with you the way you want to be communicated with. Do you see how different that is in communication? That would actually take conscious thought and awareness, and it would assume what? It would assume that I know how you want to be treated. But hang on, none of you, I think, today showed up with a DIS or C labeled on your forehead. You don't in conversation just share with somebody, hey, here's how I'd like to be communicated with, do you? We don't do that. That's why the DISC as a tool is magic, in my opinion. Now, there are many different psychometric profiling tools out there. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and maybe you've been exposed to different ones over your career. Here's why I choose DISC. It's simple. Do you get that I like simple? It's simple. There's only 4 main styles to understand, and then you can kind of understand the distinctions of 2 or more of those styles together. But this is something that, in 1 hour's time, do you guys feel like you know a thing or two about DISC right now, about yourself and about others more so than when you came in this room today? How many of you learned something so far? Excellent. Good. That's almost everybody. Who did I leave out? So in 1 hour's time, I can give you an overview and get you to the point where you're going to start to think about it for yourself. You're going to start to look and assess with other people. This is what I want you to do. I want you to observe behavior. I want you to stay present, be aware when you're talking to someone. See if you can figure out what their style is. Next time you have a conflict at work, rather than immediately jump to a reaction type of phase, really think about, why do you think the conflict is coming up? Is this just a style? Maybe before you've judged it in the past, and maybe now you're going to see it in a new light and just say, oh, I get it. Maybe if I modify and I adapt my behavior and I treat this person the way they want to be treated, then we won't have this conflict. Does that make sense? Are you with me? And so let's imagine that I'm a high I and I'm working with a high C, and I get all excited about this project that I want to do, and the C doesn't seem that excited, and I might be like, what is with you? Well, the C is just not going to get my excitement level. They're just not. It doesn't mean they don't like me. That's just who they are. And so maybe the C is going to want a little more data, detail about what are we doing, why are we doing, what is the result going to be, what are we after? Rather than make that mean anything for the I, try treating them the way they want to be treated and pull your C up. Remember I said adaptation for survival. If you want to be a great leader and increase your influence, start treating them the way that they want to be treated. So it's all about adaptation, but you can't have adaptation without awareness. So are you ready for your homework? Everybody say yes. Yes. Is that the most excited yes you've ever given to a homework assignment? I'm actually going to give you one that you're going to like, okay? Your homework assignment, I want you to, at some point over the weekend, watch a movie. And when you watch that movie, can you do this? Everybody nod your head if you can do this, yeah? You might be doing that anyway. But here's what I want you to do. The directors in Hollywood, they get this thing called DISC styles. And they will typically over-exaggerate the different styles as they go in the movie, right? And so what I want you to do is just identify the characters. What is this main character? Are they a D, I, S, or C? And why? You might see some D characteristics and you say, okay, this person's a D because they're what? Give me an example. This person's a D because they're impatient. Impatient, perfect. So you see this character and they're really impatient and you're like, D. I don't care if you're right or wrong overall. If you say, because I saw impatience, that's a D style. Perfect, you win. Or maybe you'll see another character and you think they're an I because they are what? Persuasive. Okay, this person's really persuasive and they're like out there and they're happy and people are following them, right? That's an I, and you can connect the two. This person's an S because they're steady, they're laid back. This person's a C because they're very analytical, right? So if you do that and you start practicing that, if you start looking for and gaining that awareness and connecting it with the styles, then that'll take you a long, long way.